Avancus Houston delivered some crazy performances from the men and the women. These are my 10 takeaways from the competition. Number 1, Leanne Lee is a legit threat to the 47s. She had a great day going 9 for 9. 422.5 is the 4th biggest 47 kilo total of all time, behind, of course, only Heather Connor, who was supposed to compete, unfortunately, but couldn't, Tiffany Chapone, and Jess Espinal. 422.5 is right up there. Like, all those three that I mentioned are in the 430s. So it's not a crazy ways away. And with how comfortable Leanne's final deadlift looked, 187.5, it looked like she had 5, maybe even 10 in there. I don't think she's super far away from the 430s. So the 47s are looking like they're turning into one of those competitive weight classes, and starting to see that bottleneck amongst the Americans like we have in some other weight classes, given that Jess Espinal and Heather Connor are also from America. So nationals should be interesting coming up. But she ended up finishing 2nd amongst the women and 5th overall. Number 2, Janae Kovac is coming for the 69s. 567 kilos as a 69 to chip what was the American record coming in. Unfortunately, she's not going to leave with the American record because of Meg Scanlon, who I'll get to in a second. But again, another fantastic day, 9 for 9. She finished 3rd amongst the women with the 117.75 gel points and 8th overall. And I said, going to Junior Worlds and coming out of Junior Worlds, where Janae won Best Lifter as well as the world title, that Janae is one of the top prospects out there, and I can see her becoming one of the best lifters in the world in the next few years. And she's not far away from that because, like I said, if it weren't for Meg Scanlon's performance, she would be the strongest 69 kilo American of all time. And with Agatha leaving the weight class, presumably, the 69s are kind of a bit open, and Janae is one of the lifters who I think can chase and get into the 600s or amongst the high 5s. But speaking of Meg Scanlon, not only is she the strongest 63 ever, she's also one of the strongest 69 kilo lifters in the world. So she totaled 573.5, and this included this crazy American record bench of 146, which I believe means she now has records in 3 weight classes in the bench, 57s, 63s, and 69s. But yeah, she weighed in at 66, so in between the 63s and 69, that's a sizable jump above the 63s. It's not like she pulled a Tiff Chapone at World Games and weighed in 100 grams overweight. She was quite a ways over, but still 573.5. That is above 7.5 kilos above her biggest 63 total, which happens to be the biggest 63 total ever done. And it is also pretty damn competitive when it comes to the 69s, which I'll show you in a second. But again, fantastic day going 9 for 9. There were not very many missed lifts, especially amongst the women. Almost all of them went 9 for 9. It was kind of crazy. But yeah, Meg got all her lifts in, and she finished in 1st place amongst the women and 3rd place overall. So she actually finished in overall podium with 121.46 GL points. But these are the top 10 rankings for the 69 kilo lifters in the world. As you can see, Meg Scanlon with this performance is up there with number 4. And Janae herself is actually number 6, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, when it comes to top 69s in the world, Meg Scanlon is right there behind the big 3, Agatha, Carola, Gara, and Leah Bavois. I don't think she's moving up to the 69s. I think she's definitely staying at 63s because obviously she's got stuff to do there with Alba Borstrom being the reigning world champion as well as World Games champion. So Meg is going to want to get that one back. But I said coming into this that I think Meg is going to prove to us that she's the strongest 63 in the world, which I think she did, even though she weighed in slightly heavier. But she also proved to us that she's one of the strongest 69 kilo lifters in the world, while still being mainly a 63 who just didn't do the cut. Number 4, Waska Carpio shouldn't move up to the 66s yet. So usually I'm all for lifters moving up a weight class and not draining themselves with a weight cut to realize their true strength. And that's what Waska did coming into here. He moved up into the 66s, and he looks like he fully filled out the weight class. He weighed in at 65.9. He totaled 667.5, a pretty big PB. You can see those lifts there. He went 7 for 9. He missed his 3rd squat and his 3rd deadlift. And he ended up finishing in 9th place amongst the men and 16th overall. but he still couldn't quite beat Fedosienko's best total. So 669.5 or 670.5, depending on whether you take the IPF or his Russian record, were Fedo's numbers. And Waska, even fully filling out the weight class above, still couldn't surpass those. Yeah, as a 66, obviously this makes him an elite lifter still, but it wouldn't quite put him up there as one of the top 66ers in contention for nationals and world's places. So I think he's best moving back down to the 59s. That was his final pull that he attempted of 282.5, which would have given him or was it 287.5? I think it was. So would have given him a 680 total, which he just barely got off the floor and not much further than that. But I think it would best serve Waska to stay in the 59s or go back down to the 59s, I should say, because that weight class is heating up, and for the first time ever, the 59s are actually exciting, where we're seeing head-to-head battles that are interesting to watch, with Ivan Capeña-Diaz, Antoine Garcia all leveling up, Wahyu Surya, Kasim Sand, if he can hit his stride as a 59. So Waska won those 2 world titles pretty unchallenged as a 59, but now when he goes back down, it's going to be a pretty big battle for him, and I think he's going to want to be a part of that. So for now at least, I think Waska should go back to the 59s, which, to be fair, I think he said he will, which is a good thing. And maybe later in the future he can try his hand at 66 again. Number 5, Nonso Chinye is the strongest deadlifter ever and closing in on 1,000 kilos. That is not an opinion, that is a fact. Nonso Chinye is objectively the strongest deadlifter the powerlifting world has ever seen when it comes to raw tested powerlifting. You can see there, 415.5 was absolutely nuts. I know he pulled 415 in training, but I was not expecting him to go 415 and even 415.5. I thought it was going to go maybe 412.5 just to get above that 410, 411 mark. But man, he made that look easy. It looked like he had more in there. Also, he opened with something ridiculously light like 335. So that has to be the record for the biggest spread between opener and final pull ever. That's like an 80.5 kilo difference. There's no way anyone's ever made jumps that big before. But 988 is what he totaled. And deadlift aside, let's put that aside for a second, as hard as that is, because it is the biggest pull we've ever seen. His total was also huge. 988. He went 9 for 9. He finished 7th among the men and in 10th place overall. But he didn't miss a single lift. I'm pretty sure he PB'd every single lift. And 988 eclipsed his 985 gym total that he put up. And that actually makes him officially the second strongest 120 kilo lifter of all time. Only behind Rondell, who again, unfortunately couldn't compete. He had to pull out with just a few days before the meet. Hopefully he's back at full health for SBD Austin. But yeah, this makes him the second strongest 120 ever, above Dennis Cornelius' 978.5 world record, above even Bob's best 120 performance, which was also 978.5. I know Bob's done more in the gym, but if you're going off platform totals, Nonso is the second strongest 120 to ever do it, and he's closing in on that 1,000. I know his squat was a bit of a grind, but I think he can pack more kilos on still, and that deadlift, I don't know what this man's limit is on deads, but it sure as hell is not 415.5, because that moved scary quick. And I know we saw him miss 400 kilos for his pull for the win at Worlds. We're not going to see this man miss a deadlift less than this for a while to come, I think. He absolutely destroyed that pull. And I can't wait to see how much further he takes that. I know coming into this, the storyline was who was going to pull last, who was going to walk away with the biggest deadlift ever, Nonso or Rondell. And unfortunately, Rondell ended up dropping out. To be honest, I don't think it would have even mattered. Even if Rondell had been there, would he have outpulled this version of Nonso, who smoked 415.5? Honestly, I kind of don't think so. I mean, maybe Rondell could have come out and taken 416 and potentially got it. But if you ask me right now after that, who I think the strongest deadlifter in the world is, I'm kind of picking Nonso over Rondell. Number 6, Jamar Royster is the best squatter on the planet and needs to get to an international meet. So Jamar totaled 890.5 in the 93s, He ended up going 9 for 9, having a great day, finishing 6th amongst the men and 9th overall. But the story for him was the story we knew coming in, and that was the 800-pound squat. He loaded it and he smoked it. 800 pounds taken for a ride by a 93. Jamar has had the strength to squat 800 pounds for a while now. He's finally been able to put it onto the platform, and that was very satisfying to watch. And he also had a great showing on his bench and his deadlift too, and he's in the high 800s now, less than 10 kilos away from the 900s, which genuinely puts him up there as one of the best 93s on the planet, in America and in the world. But man, that squat is insane. Yeah, pound for pound, Jamar has to be up there with one of the best, if not the best squatters ever. I mean, that was about 8 kilos above Ross's world record that he did at NAPFs, which, to be fair, I think Ross has more kilos on him too. But honestly, looking at that, I think going squat for squat, Jamar probably would out-squat Ross if they went head-to-head. And then other great squatters, of Perks, a fantastic squatter as well. I'll get to him in a second. There are a bunch of amazing squatters, but 800 pounds as a 93 is ridiculous. And yeah, Jamar Royster, the fact that he's never held a squat world record is criminal, and that is only because he's never been able to make it to an international meet, because it's so hard getting an international spot out of Team USA because there's so many other great lifters. But Jamar's bench and deadlift is improving, so hopefully we'll get to see him at an international NAPFs or something. I just get this man the world record that he deserves when he comes to his squat. Number 7, speaking of 93s, Demetrius Smith was a bench grind away from walking away as the strongest 93 ever. So Demetrius Smith went 7 for 9. He finished 5th amongst the men and 7th overall, totaling 900 kilos. So he entered the 900 kilo club as a 93, which I predicted he would. He did so on his second pull of 380 to match the best that he did in training. And then he loaded up crazy. He loaded up 400.5 kilos on his third pull to attempt to become the strongest 93 ever with 920.5. Of course, Will Ball's 920 is the biggest 93 total ever. And that is what that pull looked like. So he got it off the floor. To be fair to him, he did get it off the floor and he got it to just below the knees, but unfortunately couldn't stand up with it. So 400.5 was just a little bit too much. To be honest, I actually think that he made it look better than I thought he would. When he loaded, I was like, there's no way he's even budging this off the floor. But he got it off the floor, he got it moving. And like I said, he went 7 for 9, obviously missing that final Hail Mary pull of 400.5. The other lift he missed was a third attempt bench press, right? Which he ended up benching 205 on his second. 210 was his PB. He jumped 10 kilos to 215. And that is how close he came to locking out 215 kilos. Now, had he have got that 215, which like I said, and like you can see there, he was only a few inches away from locking out, he only would have had to load, I say only, but he only would have had to load 390.5 on his final pull to total 920.5. Based on that, how comfortable that 380 was, and based on the fact that he got 400.5 moving and to almost the knees, I actually think 390.5 could well have been there for him, which means he only had to lock out that bench, and I probably think he could have walked away with 920.5. So yeah, it's unfortunate that bench grind just failed him, and the 5 kilo PB he got on squats cancelled out when he benched 5 kilos under his comp best, and then of course had to load up crazy on his deadlift. But regardless, Demetrius Smith is in the 900s. Got one of the biggest pulls amongst the 93s, and there are a few monster pullers there, so he is going to be a huge threat moving forward, as we knew he was, especially leading into PNATs next year. Number 8, Angelo Fortino falls just short of the 700-pound squat, 800-pound deadlift combo, but still beats Ade, kind of. So I'll elaborate what I mean here, but Angelo Fortino went 9 for 9, totaling 860 kilos. He squatted a 2.5 kilo PB for above 700 pounds, benched a 2.5 kilo PB, almost 400 pounds now, and that bench moved easy too. I think he's got 400 pounds in him. And he deadlifted 360, just under 800 pounds. Now, he ended up finishing third amongst the men, so he actually podiumed amongst the men, and finished in 4th place overall. So fantastic showing from him on paper. His squat initially got red lighted and then he got overturned, and it's super hard to see from this angle, but it's the only angle I can show you at this point. But that is his 322.5 squat at the deepest point. And not going to lie, when I was watching it live, and even the commentators and everyone was saying, it kind of did look high. It looked, I would say, noticeably higher than his other attempts. But like I said, I didn't see the side angle, so it could well look different from there. And the jury did overrule it, so fair enough. They gave it to him. And then he pulled 360 on his final attempt. And slight controversy again, because was it fully locked out? It was close. You can see that's him in the locked out position, and it probably does look better there than it did live. Live, it looked like he couldn't quite lock it out fully, but there I can see how they gave that to him as a good lift, to be honest. But either way, those are two pretty borderline lifts that he was quite fortunate to get. Whether you think they were good lifts or not, both of them were close. But he did get both of them, and thus he went 9 for 9 and totaled 860 for a huge total PB. He is in the 860s. Yet another 83 in the 860s. And he was only 6 pounds away from being able to pull 800 pounds. Although, given how borderline that 360 was, I think it was a good call, because I don't think 800 pounds was there on the day. So credit to them for taking that attempt selection, not being tempted to just go for the 800 pounds. They could secure the combo. But yeah, he actually did beat Ade. Kind of, because Ade actually did out-total him. Ade totaled 865. However, Ade came in heavy, weighing 84.4. So he didn't weigh in as an 83, which was fine. I mean, it was a meet based on gel points, so all lifters were free to weigh in whatever they wanted, really. But it was an interesting choice for Ade to come in over. And because of that, he actually ended up with a lower gel point score than Angelo, even though he still out-totaled him by 5 kilos. So Ade ended up finishing in 4th place amongst the men and in 6th overall, going 7 for 9. He missed a bench, but he came back and got his 3rd anyway, so it didn't matter too much. And he went 2 for 3 on deads, 355 on his 2nd, and then he attempted 375 on his 3rd, and unfortunately couldn't quite get it off the floor. That's him there. Didn't break it off the ground, and it looks like Ade's deadlift curse continues, although, even though, I mean, funnily enough, it was a much worse miss than we'd seen previously from him on his 3rd pulls at Sheffield and Worlds, where he actually pretty much stood up with it and just lost it at lockout. But the fact that he missed it like this, it probably doesn't feel as bad because he didn't come close. So he's like, fair enough, he just wasn't strong enough on the day. Whereas his Sheffield and his Worlds pulls were so frustrating because he damn near stood up with them. He just couldn't make it count. But yeah, this time it was in fact the strength miss for Ade, unlike the previous ones. But I'm sure he'll come back stronger. And I guess Angelo beat him, even though he kind of didn't out-total him. But on gel points, Angelo came out on top there. Number 9, Joe Borenstein grinds his way to extending his record. And for now, I think he is safe as the 83 kilo king. So Joey B had quite the day. He was going 8 for 8 going into his final pull, getting all of his... he did miss a bench. He missed his opening bench, but went up anyway and got the rest. But he made all his 3rd attempts. He grinded out a 307.5 kilo squat for a 2.5 kilo PB. Then he benched 219 kilos to chip his American record and also unofficially chip the world record held by Owen Hubbard since 2019 of 218.5. So Joey B is now the strongest 83 bencher ever. And then he deadlifted 377.5 on his 3rd, again chipping his American record by half a kilo, and totaling 904 kilos on his 2nd attempt deadlift, as of course an 83, because unlike Ade, he did make weight. And that gave him 125.18 GL points, which is the 2nd highest GL points ever done. Unfortunately, he was competing against the only guy in the history of planet Earth who could have beaten him. We'll talk about it in a second. But yeah, he had a fantastic day apart from that final pull, pretty much finishing 2nd place amongst the men and 2nd place overall. Then he attempted 386 kilos to pull for the win, and he was just too much on the day. So he was just starting to get off the ground. I mean, he didn't fully get off the ground, didn't go. So, I mean, yeah, at PA Nats, he took 377 on his second, and he looked like a third. And he was lucky Taylor didn't make him pay for that. It wasn't quite as bad this time. Like his 377.5, still I wouldn't say quite moved like a second, but it wasn't quite as hard as his 377 at PA Nats, I don't think. But it was obviously still hard enough to where he couldn't lift 8.5 kilos more, which would have given him 912.5 and was the number he needed to outpull or to beat Perk on GL points, which would have been crazy if he got. But yeah, well, it wasn't quite there on the day, although Joey B, I think, is still safe as a number 183. He's now over 900 kilos, 904, and we could see from his performance, people were saying Ade was the closest to him. Ade finished 40 kilos back, right? And I know Ade also finished about that far back at Worlds, but it felt a lot closer at Worlds because Ade came out for a final deadlift for the win and damn near locked it out as well, right? Before he blacked out like an inch from the top and dropped it. So this time where Ade missed his third pull completely on strength, and even if he had got that pull, he still would have finished 20 kilos behind Joey B. Yeah, I think Joey B is pretty safe as the number one. Of course, you have some super strong 83s, like Angelo Fortino, like I said, he's in the 860s now. You've got Sean Noriega in the 860s. You've got, obviously, Taylor Atwood in the 870s. Delaney Wallace was in the 860s, although I think he's a 93 now. Yeah, there are some super strong 83s. However, Joey B, I don't think anyone's beating him anytime soon in this weight class, because the only person who could have beaten him pound for pound on GL points was Austin Perkins. And unfortunately for Joey B, Austin Perkins is who was competing against today. Austin Perkins is the undisputed number one pound for pound king, and he could break every single world record at Sheffield. So we finally saw Perk come out and take 9 lifts. We still didn't see him push and go all out. So he squatted 320 and it moved pretty damn smoothly. He had plenty more left. Moved like an easy second. Then he benched 208 kilos, which is the most we've ever seen him do, and he still moved pretty comfortably. Again, I would say like a pretty smooth, easy second. And then he deadlifted 330, which is something he's exceeded before as well. And he worked a little bit more on that deadlift, but I still say it moved like a second attempt. Maybe not quite as easily as his squat and bench, but still pretty damn comfortably. And that gave him 858 kilos as a 74. So Perk finally beat his 851, which it feels like he's been able to do forever, which he did over 2 years ago now. But he finally put it on the platform. He still didn't go all out, but the fact that he totaled 858 without having to go all out, yeah, he is the number one, undisputed number one. I mean, even if Joby had made that final pull and beaten him, you still could have made the case Perk was the number one pound for pound lifter on the planet because of the fact he didn't go all out and how easy he made his lifts look. But the fact that, you know, he can compete against literally the second strongest lifter of all time, if you're going by GL points, and still beat him without going all out, just shows you how special he is. And he is undisputed. Like, people were saying, and hell, including me, I was saying some of this as well, that, you know, Perk should finally drop the hammer and go all out, because he's not necessarily undisputed number one anymore with lifters starting to creep up. But with this performance, he has to be the undisputed number one. Like, yeah, there's no real argument against that at this point. But yeah, he went 9 for 9, had a perfect day, and finished, of course, first place amongst the men, first place overall. The biggest GL points we've ever seen from a raw tested male lifter. Second only for all of raw tested, of course, only behind Agatha. But yeah, Perk was absolutely unstoppable today. And when I say break, he could break every single world record at Sheffield. The squat world record is 323, owned by Austin Perkins, and based on that 320, he's for sure going to annihilate that at Sheffield. The bench press world record is 215.5 by Chun Chia Fan, 7.5 kilos above what Perk did. And based on how Perk made that move, like a second attempt, I don't think it's out of the realm of imagination that he's able to break the bench world record as well. And the deadlift world record is 340.5, held by Ilya Marichev. And again, based on how that 330, how smooth that 330 was, moved like a second attempt, and Perk has done 337.5 before, I don't think it's a stretch at all to say he can go above 340.5. In fact, I think he will. And of course, he owns the total world record at a 43, which he's going to absolutely annihilate. So I think there is a good to fair chance Perk leaves Sheffield as the squat, bench, deadlift, and total world record holder in his weight class, which would be one of the extremely rare times that has ever happened in the history of the sport, and it's not happened for a long time. So that would be something special. But here are the overall results. Your top 10. Perk, Joy B, and Meg Scanlon made podium. Angelina Fortino, Leanne Lee, Adeo Misakin, Demetria Smith, Janae Kovacs, Jamar Royster, and Nonso Chinye rounding out the top 10. And here is the breakdown for all the women's results. The top 7 for the women: Meg Scanlon, Leanne Lee, and Janae Kovacs as the 3 best lifters there by quite a bit. And the men's results there, you can see the top 10. Perk, Joy B, Ange Fortino making the podium, and then the rest of the lifters behind there. But I mean, I quite enjoyed that meet. I think Avancus did a great job with the production, with everything, and having more meets in the powerlifting calendar is a good thing for the best lifters in the world, because especially in this period between Worlds and the next year's Sheffield, kind of not a lot happening. So I'm all for this. Great job for Avancus putting this meet together. And yeah, let me know what you thought of the performances.